I really appreciate your time.
No worries, Jay. Thanks for having me.
How's your day been so far?
It's been okay. I've been out and about, definitely, all over London town, seeing the sights of the sights are the inside of a tube and a train. So, and then various gyms.
That's the joys of being a personal trainer. Do you carry your equipment with you or?
Yeah, some stuff. Luckily I have access to quite a few gyms, like because of the nature of a few people I train. I'm allowed to use certain gyms, some well-known gyms, as in brands. So that's really cool. So I know what they got. But yeah, I always have a few tools. I'm the guy who wanders in with this big rucksack, like puts it down on the middle of the floor, having to hide. And then when I'm at my own gym, it drives me mental when people bring rucksacks and go from machine to machine and put their rucksacks down. They never seem to get that much out of them. But trust me, I take a lot out of that rucksack. Has to be like correctly stacked every night before I go. Have to really plan what I'm going to take. And so yes, that was today.
You're like a magician pulling stuff out the hat. It's just this bag that's
Exactly.
never
Yeah.
ending.
There's a lot up my sleeves.
So tell me about your background and what you do. For those that don't know, obviously who you are. So floor is yours. Introduce yourself, and yeah, we'll go from there.
Well, my name's Rob, and I train people to the best of my abilities in various aspects of fitness. Whether that be strength, mobility, just general conditioning, sport specific, music specific, all of those kind of things. What is my background? I don't even know what my background is. I started karate when I was 13. At 14, I met a taekwondo teacher who changed my life, and I then went off to taekwondo, and that really unfolded my life. I was a little bit of a pain in the backside so my parents tell me. I've wiped that bit out of my memory as a child. So I had loads of energy, and that energy wasn't always put into the right place, as it were. And suddenly taekwondo came along. Then I found a teacher or a coach I could believe in, and that made a hell of a difference. And that was it. I was just committed. And I then played in a band. That was a good aspect of my life. But I continued training, and I had lots of escapades training people on the road and stuff like that. And then eventually that ended, and I was always still into martial arts, and I was now into MMA, doing MMA. And it just seemed like a logical progression to get to here now, because when I was looking at things, I like to, not study's the wrong word, but I like to see what was going on, what the best people in the world were doing, and try and bring that to our training. Now training wasn't like that. So I'd ask lots of questions and irritate loads of people, and I was a pain to loads of teachers, and sometimes outside the gang, because, I would ask a lot of questions and try and bring in new things that I'd seen on what was the road to the octagon. It used to be, I can't remember. You remember they used to make those hour documentaries before every UFC,
Yeah.
and there would be them running up hills and stuff like that, and I'd be videoing it, pausing it, writing notes, and why aren't we doing that? So and that really brings me to here. After that, I started asking a lot of questions, and I used to live in Blackheath, and I started training a few people from my fight gym on Blackheath, just helping out and stuff. And then a lady came past, and she said to me, "Can you train me?" And I was like, "No, I'm not a trainer." And she came back a few times and asked me to train her. And that was many years ago. So I'm 42 now. And I still train her.
Wow.
So thanks to her, I became a trainer. And, it took me a little bit of persuading, but I went for it a few years back, and here I am now.
So
Talking to you.
yeah. So you wouldn't be on the personal training journey basically without that woman. Maybe. Well, you can never say never, but without her sort of influence and
Yeah, I
pressing you.
think I didn't value myself. I didn't see myself like that. If you look at, when I was at the gym or around trainers, they always seemed quite separate to me. But yeah, perhaps it took someone like that to believe in me when I didn't believe in myself, to get me off the get a foot up my arse, basically.
So how did you sort of land your clientele? Because obviously I've seen on your Instagram you're working with like Paloma Faith, Ollie Murs, just like those two people, just a name, for example, for the people out there that don't know. Emma Willis, I think, as well.
Yeah.
How did you land them?
Bit of good fortune. As I said, I used to play in a band, and I started training a guy who he used to run like a street team, like years before. Man, it had been huge. It was called X Taste. So this is like 2005. So it's before Facebook and all things like that. And he said to me, "Do you know what? I was training him. I used to train him in the park, Millennium Park, which is right where the London Eye is, and And I was like the only trainer sort of allowed to train there, because I used to talk to all the gardeners and they wouldn't grass me up, whereas everyone else they'd chase off because I don't think you're allowed to train there, kind of thing. And he was said to me, "You'd be really good at music because you understand the bubble." But it wasn't just that. I sort of knew some of the demands of musicians and stuff like that and performers, and could relate that to perhaps preparing for a fight or a sports event. So I, approached it that way. Luckily, you mentioned Emma Willis. I know her husband, Matt, who's completely into his fitness, and quite a few people around him are really into his fitness. I knew him really well. And so we trained together and, used to show him stuff. And he's really smart with nutrition and he's educated himself really well. And so that was sort of a roundabout thing. And then eventually, because I knew Emma, he was like, "Can you train Emma?" And I was like, "I'd love to." And then it sort of like went from there,
No,
one after the other, And I'm quite lucky. I train, some people you can mention, some you can't. But yes, I do seem to train a lot of musicians. And I like training them because they're really sort of like hungry people. For example, I've been waiting for a guy one session. It was Ollie Murs, and I was in Manchester, and he had been out since like 7 on this grueling radio tour, and got back about 9:30, and in the evening he still wanted to train. Do you know what I mean? Like there's that drive in certain people, and you can understand why perhaps they're at the level they are. I'm not really commenting on talent or anything like that. I'm saying that all of these people have perhaps that extra bit of motivation that, like a lot of people can learn from. A lot of people who want to be like them can look towards them and go, "Do you know what? When you think it's time for Netflix, they're going for a session or whatever."
They're still grinding on their dreams, or to be successful in those 13-hour days,
Yeah, completely. I think they understand the process and the work they've got to put in, the sacrifice to a degree they've got to put in. It's not for everyone, but there's definitely a theme in the people I train. I'm training a musician tomorrow morning, and I text her and I was like, "Seriously, Kelly, I've only got, I can only do this time." And she's like, "Okay." I'm like, "All right, what can you do?" But she's going to be up early. Let's put it like that. And I'm sure she's then got a grueling day ahead of her, when she'd prefer a lie-in, rest the voice and all that malarkey.
Do you find that their energy kind of rubs off on you, their motivation, their drives? Because they say, like, if you surround yourself in that bubble, that it's going to start to motivate you and keep you driven. And if you're hanging around with negative people who aren't going nowhere in life, that kind of vibe rubs off on you as well. Have you found that in yourself? Like you meet, I don't know, Ollie Murs, and you spend an hour training him, and then you're like, "Do you know what? I just feel fucking motivated right now."
He is a very positive person. Like it is good. He always comes in like, "All right," like it's never like, "Oh," kind of thing, which is great, because that sets the tone for the session. You might have all these plans, but if that person's energy isn't there, if that person's energy is there at the beginning, it makes it a lot easier. But yeah, there's a lot of talk at the minute, and obviously, I've always been influenced by Joe Rogan, and his podcast has been a bit of a mecca for my life. And he always talks about removing negative people, and lots of people say that, and it is true. But I quite like an Eeyore, like, to use a Winnie the Pooh analogy. I quite like moany people, and I just don't particularly like people who drag people down. I'll give you a great example. I was away last week, and I'd been up, and I get up every morning. I go swimming when I was away, and do some other things. But it really wakes me up, makes me feel awesome. Like I literally just get in, shower, jump in the pool, ta-da! And I was on the way up, and a lady that was, considerably overweight got into the lift with me, and I'm like, all right. And she's like, yeah. And she says, we just been doing. I said, I've just been for a swim, do it every morning on holiday. She said to me, on holiday? She said, I can't think of anything worse to do on holiday. And I said to her, oh, well, do you do that kind of thing at home then? And she looked at me and was like, no. Then I was like, well, how do you know? And that's an example of someone. I quite like a moan. I think as British people, we quite like a moan. We're a little more cynical than like some of our American friends and stuff like that. But I could imagine being around her. She would have do you see what I mean? Oh, don't bother going today.
Yeah.
Give today a miss. When actually, the reason I can sort of go ta-da in the lift and have loads of energy is because of that sort of refreshing, replenishing moment. I only do 12 lengths.
No.
So yes,
I get what you mean.
Positive people are.
This she's like an energy zapper almost. At some page, you feel like, yeah, I feel like I want to go to the gym, but I'm not. I'm a little bit demotivated, and then you get her going, just go tomorrow. Don't worry about it, and you're like, oh
yeah.
And then that workout never happens, and then your energy just slumps. Whereas that morning session that you did on holiday, getting the blood pumping, getting the brain focused, that's why you're there. You're in your element. You're prepared.
Exactly. And it's only the second time I'd ever been to an all-inclusive place. And there's this massive breakfast, and I feel like if I start the day going, that's sort of my tone of the day, and I feel quite heavy, and I'm not going to go to yoga at 10:15 or, try and absolutely prank my nephews in the pool kind of thing,
Because you
can hold my breath. I can hold my breath for a bloody long time. I just swim under, and when they're on their inflatables, and just dump them off.
So
42 going on 4.2.
What advice would you give to say someone who's trying to build in the fitness industry? So they're trying to gain high level clientele, or just trying to be successful. Because obviously you said about you have your own sort of gym and things like that. And there's a lot of people that will drop out due to.
I don't have my own gym.
Yeah,
I travel around. That's the plan for next year. That's next year. Gym. Oh yeah, I want to open a facility. But sorry, let's go back to that question.
Yeah, no, so I'm just thinking I've willed it into the universe for you, man. So next year you'll have your gym.
I appreciate that. I appreciate. I'm pulling that. I'm pulling that one in. It's, in all honesty, who am I to give advice? I can tell you my story, but let's be honest, it's giving advice is a tricky thing. You just sort of say to people, this is what happened, and these are the things that I aim for. I saw a really good post the other day by a trainer I've worked with called David Alexander, and he said, as a trainer, if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. And I loved it. And I was like, it's that preparation. For example, I know some guys at the minute that are doing really, really well, but I sort of know their sessions are all about them. And they have an aura, and that may be great, but I wouldn't ever think that they actually think about the people they're training. Just like, I would do this because it's me giving it to them. I think if you become a trainer, you've sort of got to put your own training to one side. That doesn't mean you don't have your self-development and all that, but you focus on that. You focus on the people you're training. And so you look for, Instagram is a big, thing for trainers, but you look at a lot of Instagram and it's literally them doing stuff. And he's saying, come train with me. I'll sell you an online whatever, and come train with me. But I want to see how they train people, how they interact with people. So I think I made the decision really when I started this to stop training. I injured my back, and I remember going to a class in town, doing a Thai boxing class, and I checked a kick wrong, and I limped home, and I had to teach in the afternoon, and I was like, sort of like, trying to teach completely broken. And I sort of thought to myself, well, I can't do this. It's either one or the other. And, as if you look at the fight world and all that, a lot of people who are still in, because there's not much money, they're still fighting and learning or whatever in classes as well as teaching. And, they still got to eat and do all those other things. But I think if you're a trainer, you've got to invest in your students and your clients more. And I think that's something that I've been very conscious of. And because I think I also had heroes in training, and I've gone and met them all. I've gone and trained with everyone, or, observed sessions. And it didn't matter where they were. I identified who I thought, and it was not just one field. I went across a few fields, and I've now made a new list, and I want to go see what these people do, because that's the magic. You see what they do, how they train, whether it be, like mums, whether it be young people, whether it be elite athletes. Let's see what they do, what magic they bring to the table. And I'm quite an insecure person, so I want to know what they're doing. Do they have a little bit of knowledge or a way with people, or some form of program that I don't know about?
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed that from your sort of Instagram posts that there isn't pretty much many of you doing much. It's always your clientele that you're kind of showing.
Yeah, who wants to see me in my top off? I'm 42, and I find it quite funny that a lot of the biggest trainers in that world, it really is all about them. They are a brand, and I think that it's a real shame to a degree that they have all these followers and they genuinely do have some influence, and they're really more about, here's me with a bottle of water. Make sure you get your hydration in. And I understand that, that everyone's got to make money, but I think there's a level of integrity, and ultimately, why do you do it? Why do you do this? And I do it to hopefully make people's lives better. And if I had my way, I'd like to influence people on a greater scale, because, as I said, when I went on holiday, I saw some really, overweight young kids, a lot of overweight young kids. And it honestly makes me so, so sad, because on so many fronts, we talk about choice in life, but I feel like they've never really had a choice, because, we don't allow young people to vote because we sort of think that they're not qualified to do that. But someone else has been qualifying their decisions in lifestyle and nutrition, that by the time they are older, there's all sorts of things. We can look at diabetes and, just being able to move and, getting upstairs and being out of breath and all things like that, to actual sort of lot more like genetic and, what are you going to pass on to the next podcast. And there was a podcast a little while back with Dr. Rhonda Patrick talking about how obese people and their sperm, and it literally blew my mind. And it's something that I really want to research and get on top. And I'd like to re-communicate that, because I feel like she said a little piece of magic and no one's really picked up on that. But, even, going through puberty earlier and all these other factors that being overweight that young, just enjoying life, just going out. And I watched the Goonies the other night. I love the Goonies. And, there was Chunk. There's always been someone, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Giving it the traffic trouble. But now there's 5 Trunks. And so that's sort of not my calling, but I think we need to think less about advertising stuff and look at me and actually about doing something good. And I think it's about doing something necessary right now. I heard David Goggins say the other day. Is that how you say his name? David Goggins?
Yeah. Like Goggins.
Yeah. I like him a lot. But he said a really good thing, and he was like, everyone's like, oh, you're doing great, you love it. Everyone's so nice to each other. He goes, but the way you start is you sort your shit out. And I was like, that's a really good line, because everyone is so scared to offend each other that perhaps we're not telling the truth.
Yeah.
Perhaps we're not being as honest and as real with certain people as as we should be, and sort of say, hey, these are the consequences, and maybe one day it will be like WALL-E, you know, when they're all up in space and, you know, forgotten how to use their bodies and that kind of thing. Maybe it will be like that. And so perhaps, you know, it is a case of being more realistic and going, do you know what? You got to sort your shit out, and that's where you start.
No, I agree, man. Like, child obesity is just massive at the moment, like a big thing that's growing. And I think a lot of the parents are poorly educated as well. There's no education in schools about, you know, healthier choices. The school meals are shit. You know, they're not really nutritional in any way. They're just like, yeah, have a slice of pizza and some chips. Like, how the fuck is that
and that is
a kid?
And I saw that when I was away. Let's go get pizza and chips for lunch. And there's this vast array of amazing foods. And there were loads of crazy examples. I went to a sushi restaurant in this place that was amazing. And, you know, just how few people came for sushi and then just waited for the chicken to go round and then, you know, left. But yes, I've been trying to look into that a lot more. But if you think about it, theoretically, children should be calorie machines. They should be able to consume a lot of food. I don't think, you know, we go back when Jamie Oliver was giving it all about the turkey Twizzlers. I was eating Wham bars and Angel Delight. You know what I mean? It wasn't. My parents I ate with them, and it was quite a boring liver and bacon kind of like household, you know, kind of thing. But I did love pudding, and I still love pudding. But I would like to talk to some parents, you know, like, and say, what do you honestly think about your children? What do you honestly think about the job that you've done? Because I think sort of perhaps they love them so much, you can't be objective. And, you know, because you just you see your child and you love them. And that's something I want to understand a bit more, the sort of like psychology of it all. And I ask the people who I train and my nephews, I inquire about how much they're 8 and 10, how much PE they do. And, you know, like, they do an hour and a half a week. And my sister was telling me that some of the parents think it's too much. I'm like, that's nothing. It's like, it's nothing. You know, they do a little run every day, which is really cool. And the teachers do some cool things. But yeah, but we've sort of done this to ourselves, you know, you know, we used to, I played on the streets, genuinely, played football in the road badly, tennis in the road, crazy. But, I genuinely did those things, and I remember like seeing it a couple of years ago when that came out, and the kids put their bikes in the front garden. I was like, we used to do that, and now you don't go past. Someone would nick the bikes, or you know, we have slightly altered our culture, and perhaps not altered our, you know, sort of like biological lifestyles to match our shifting culture.
Yeah, no, I agree, because there definitely is like a lack of exercise in kids nowadays. I mean, my nephews were here earlier and I was like, oh, do you want to come walk the dog with me? Like, we'll go for a nice walk around the park. And they're just playing the Xbox, and one of them was on his phone, and I'm just like, they're like, nah. And I'm like, what do you mean nah? Like, if that was me when I was younger, I was like, yeah, get me out of the house. I'm off.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a lot of children nowadays are spending so much time on Xbox and things like that when they get home from school, whereas when I was at school, we'd have, say, PE every other day or whatever, and then I'd still go home and go out and play Stuck in the Mud or whatever, Hunt, whatever you want to call it, you know, just play those games, and you're burning the calories off for the shit food that maybe you have consumed.
And moving, and you know, like I've been brought in recently to train a couple of late teenagers, and I am shocked at their mobility. Not being a completely, you know, like mobility is something I have to work tirelessly at myself. But, you know, really rounded shoulders, really pronating feet, you know, nothing in the glutes. So they're really, the hips just fall open. But in other areas, they're so tight. And there's a theme. It isn't just one person. I've seen this theme in a few people. And I'm like, wow, is this what doing this, how the body is changing again? But I could go on about schools and, you know, like for ages and just education. You know, I do have quite a lot of views on that kind of thing. But I will spare you that for getting me back.
Yeah, no, I'm down for that. So what's your view on vegan diets as well? Because I've had a couple of other trainers on here from America, and they're not massively keen on it as a long-term thing. I just wanted to get your take on veganism.
Well, I would say, like there's several different angles of coming at that. I am a predominantly plant-based and vegetable guy. Like I really like my vegetables, and but I eat meat and fish and stuff. And I think if we're looking at it from perhaps a more environmental aspect, then yeah, we have got to sort of head towards more of a vegan lifestyle and squeeze that. But one thing I completely have noticed, whether you look at Donny Ramon, Chris Summers, like the list of elite trainers goes on and on. They all mention you got to have a little bit of meat, you got to have a little bit of meat. And there was an amazing article about, I have someone, a trained vegan, and she said to me, Serena Williams, and then I read, and Serena wasn't a strict vegan. We're talking about elite performance here, not everyone. And there was an article about the Tour de France this year saying first vegan Tour de France guy, like amazing. But then when you read the full article, he was still eating salmon weekly. So there's different qualities to this thing. I don't really see a war. There's that other diet at the minute where people are just eating meat as well. And then there's the vegan. I don't see a war, and I just think I just eat. I don't understand why people want to be labelled like you will see on Instagram. I'm the vegan warrior. I'm the vegan this, or I'm the meat this, and I just sort of think, like we need to perhaps not look at such extremes. The problem we were just talking about is perhaps getting people to eat some vegetables, more vegetables, and then whereas veganism seems like a different world. Vegan desserts aren't very good. That's a problem. That's my problem anyway. But so do you sort of see, like I would edge towards that, but maybe not for elite performance. But I don't think you need as much meat as we're presently consuming if we're looking at the general population. But yeah, there are great. I'm a big believer in collagen, for example. My collagen is an animal protein from the bones of grass-fed cattle. That's what I sort of supplement with, and I supplement fish oil and all sorts of that. And I would recommend that to people I train as well. So I just think it's a case of eat more vegetables.
Yeah, rather than go.
But I know there are there are some elite athletes out there. I believe, isn't it funny? I just know who's the tennis player. He's DJ Knockervol.
Novak Djokovic.
On Instagram. Yeah. That he's a vegan and stuff like that. But yeah, and there's definitely some American footballers that are now vegans, and they're feeling the benefits, and you can't knock the benefits. But if you look at overall trends, and as I said, elite trainers, which is what I'm looking towards what's Usain Bolt doing, not what Dave down the street's doing. And there's always an element. It may not be as big as as we sort of consume like meat, but yes, I would sort of say we eat some meat. And I put myself, I try a lot of experiments on myself, and I put myself on a vegan diet, and they got to the point, I think I was 3.5 weeks in. I did 6 weeks. That's right. I did 6.5 weeks, and I craved, and I went and got some liver. That wouldn't be my normal food. I went to a kebab shop that I knew that did really good liver, and I was like, and I felt amazing the next day. So I think maybe I took it out too quickly, but
no,
I just think eat more veg.
I agree with you. I mean, I've tried for a little while to be a vegan, and it was just so difficult for me. But also, I didn't personally feel that great. I felt like I needed a bit of meat, and maybe I needed to give it 2 months worth of trying before my body just utilised, got rid of all of that out of my system and just utilised sort of the veg and other little things. But I suppose each to their own on the individual. But yeah, a lot of top athletes are still using or still having some form of meat, just maybe not on the mass consumption that the average Joe is.
Yeah,
is
and it seems to be that if an athlete is a vegan, everyone's like, look, but there's 100 that aren't. And I know that's normal life as well. But I also think the quality of the meat is massive that we do. And I'm a big believer in the quality of our food rather than the quantity, as many people are. So you just eat more veg. And I suppose it's that idea of genetic disposition, our DNA. I try to encourage people to always get their bloods done. Obviously it's all how much you can afford and how much you're willing to invest into your health. But they're good markers, biomarkers to sort of see, okay, this is what's missing from your diet. What are you eating too much of? And then you can sort of see. And it may be that both of our cases, we went in a bit too hard and we just needed to go in softer.
Yeah. So what sort of tips would you give for someone who was looking to lose like weight but in like body fat, not muscle? Because there's so many people out there that will go on this radical like eat 2 meals a day, 1 meal a day thing and think, yeah, I've lost weight, but what they've obviously lost is muscle. Rather than the fat side of it.
And water weight sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm not that trainer. I'm not that kind of person who's going to sell you the magic pill or the potion kind of thing. I would say to them that if they wanted to lose that weight, let's do it. But let's do it in a sense that, first of all, you can maintain, you'll have fun. So if I look at my training and I look at the goals that the people who I train set themselves and that I want to achieve, that we'll come up with kind of thing, there's a massive element of skill-based in that. So I try to make the sessions as entertaining as possible, as challenging, and so they're not specific. We're not busting it out like, it's not like a boot camp style. Because I want them to enjoy their training. I don't want them to dread it. So it may take us twice as long as some of the, other trainers and the things you're talking about in regards to if I was to give tips. My tip would be see weight loss as a byproduct to a healthier lifestyle. And, like having your shoulders just in the right place, just feeling better is such a blessing. I've been putting time into my mobility and I just feel better when I move. See, let me shaking on my seat. I just feel better, and that's a beautiful thing, and that's a byproduct. I'm still training, I'm still burning calories, and all those other aspects. So I would see take away generally a time aspect. Because how many people have I seen on Instagram? I mentioned that a lot, but also that I've met that particularly went into like some sort of competition. So they might have been overweight. They then got into some like body competition. And then when I see them, they're sort of halfway house. They're not quite where they were. And they're always doing those throwback pictures of when I was ripped, or the contrast of this is when I was overweight and this is when I was ripped. And I just sort of feel it's unsustainable. And I think they're missing sometimes the great thing of a challenge in training, having things that challenge you, and that's why, we spoke about a few people beforehand in the email and stuff and they're big influences on me because they're bringing in aspects of training which I can bring into mine, that sometimes when you're playing those games and doing those mental things, you don't really realize how out of breath or how knackered you are until you stop and you go, whew. And I honestly think it's a really charming and underrated thing. And, you've really used your brain as well, which is a great thing because we don't do much of that.
How do you integrate the fit lights into your sessions? Because I know, obviously, like you just mentioned there, I'm sure you've watched Nicholas Alexander's stuff with...
Yeah, I'm out with Nicholas in Miami, so...
now.
Not now, but I did a session with him in Miami. We talked. He contacted me ages ago, as I had the Fit Lights for quite a while, and he just sort of said to me, use the Fit Lights, you know, and I do. And he's then gone on, I think, to do some really, really cool things. And I think he's someone who potentially, you know, did you see his post with the at the old people's home? You know, like, honestly, I give the guy so much kudos. I really, really like it.
Let me check it.
I integrate as part of my warm-up. So I will bring in like a mobility section, you know, get everyone warm. But then I bring in the lights to really switch people on, you know, to really get it, to really try and mentally and physically see how sharp they are. I think reactions are an underutilized skill in practice. And most people who are in gyms who are lifting and stuff like that, you know, they want to be quick, they want to be fast, they're lifting to be like superhuman, but there's an aspect of reaction they don't practice, you know, like, so I was using tennis balls before I had the Fit Lights. The Fit Lights just make life easier, more fun, and you can probably do more with it. They are a really decent tool, and they were a good investment for me. And I've also noticed that when I do these little, so I might do like, say, ask someone to skip 30 seconds and then doing a Fit Light exercise, skip 30 seconds. So they're getting more out of breath, and obviously they're feeling a bit more pressure in the exercise as, you know, as it goes along, and they're becoming more out of breath, and they're, you know, I suppose just trying to put them under more extreme conditions. Extremes are the wrong word, but I've then found when we walk over to lift or whatever, that they're much more switched on. You know, that when I ask for like, your technique, you know, find your chest or something like that, it's a lot more immediate, and I really like it like that. And again, I was trained, you know, one of the people I trained with was Exos, and I really like their setup in their warm-ups. And they have basically four tenets, 4 pillars in their warm-up, and I think I've added a 5th, and it's really helped me. Wouldn't mind going there and showing them one day.
I think Nicholas is going to change the game with the Fit Lights and the whole mental aspect and implementation in workouts, because I agree with you. If you do that sort of stuff, you are more switched on and more ready to work. And I don't know obviously he could articulate it about 1,000 times better than probably you and me, but there is something there where you're skipping, you do those lights, and then we're like, okay, we're going to go do this now, and they're like, bang, they're on the ball. And I don't know why that works that way, but it just does.
Totally. I used to watch loads and loads of bands, and I would say to my friends, these are going to do it. Like, you know, like Radiohead, The Darkness, and things like that. You know, I made terrible mistakes as well. But I feel like he is someone that is going to do something. He puts his complete attention into that. I don't do that. I take 10% of that into my sessions. And, you know, I would like to perhaps devote more time to it, but there's all these other aspects that I want to devote time to. You know, I like a super athlete, and that's how I like my training. I'm not a specialist. I think specialists often do better than I do, because people, if you want to go to a handstand, you want to go do yoga, go to this guy or this girl. You know, they're amazing at that one thing, whereas I'm trying to make my people like ninjas. And ninjas can adapt to any situation.
I was just gonna say, there's the photo of you guys. I thought I was.
Yeah.
I was shouting there. I don't know if it'll come up, but yeah, rocking.
Yeah. We've been talking. We've been talking for a long while, and you know, I just like what he does. He's a cool guy, you know, I think. I don't just think in the fighters. I think there is that. You know, he was going to the UFC Performance Institute. And I, you know, I really said to him, you know, like, this could be magic for fighters, you know, having been punched in the face so many times, just through training and stuff like that, you know, because I started when I was 13 and I really stopped when I was 40. Now, you know, perhaps I didn't have these great wars, but that's a long, long time, you know, of 27 years of going at it and, you know, eating shots and all that kind of malarkey, that he could have a way that perhaps I think this is my idea. I don't know, you know, like this was the way I saw it anyway, that perhaps all the fighters, you know, Nicholas created something all the fighters would be assessed by. And after every fight, they were then reassessed. And you could see perhaps some way of two things. You could try and build up the mind activity via exercises that he creates, but also you can see if there is any accumulative damage over the fights. If they're sort of doing that, then perhaps they send the people to Nicholas or his programs, and I think he could do magic for fighters. But also he blew my mind with the old people thing. He literally blew my mind. I was literally going to everyone, look at this, fuck those people on Instagram who are selling 15% off protein or have got you a code for shoes and stuff like that. This guy's doing something worthwhile.
Yeah. And that's the shame sometimes, is that some people don't get enough recognition for the great things they're doing. Or you go to someone, oh yeah, you can get 15% off protein, or look at what this fucking guy's doing, like how cool is this? And they're like, just give me the 15% off protein, I don't care about your video. And you're like, well, I'm trying to educate you when you just care about 15% off protein. Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, he doesn't care if he's that Jim is wearing Gymshark or something like that. He's literally just out there grafting and creating. But on the same front, that's the ethos and the ethic I try to bring into what I do, and I think most of the people that I look towards are very, very similar. And they're the real bastions. They might not have the most followers, but they're the ones who are really making a difference.
So how far did you get with Taekwondo? Like, what's the ranking system and stuff like that, in the sense of like belts and things like that?
Oh, yeah, I killed the belt. Oh no! Well, no, Taekwondo's a bit of a crazy one. I went to Thailand when I was 19, and I had won quite a few Taekwondo competitions. I'd just been to Australia and won a Taekwondo competition out there. And I thought I was badass, and I, went to some gym and, doing some pads and all that. And, I went back, I think 4 or 5 days in a row. It's a long time ago now. And then I did some like heavy sparring, and we didn't wear any shin guards. So it's a bit weird for me. And if I look at it in my head, I always felt like I won the rounds. But the next 3 days, I was just like limping as the guys had ruined me legs and everything else. So it had its weaknesses and strengths, but definitely had some strengths when I went into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, wrestling, and I suppose MMA, because it requires more dexterity. So I felt that, like I could go both ways, and I've always switched. And so like gone from Southpaw to Orthodox. And, just to see, is it going to confuse? What can I draw out the person I'm sparring and stuff like that? So I like Taekwondo, but I was a third dan in Taekwondo,
Nice.
So, yeah, but I was never bothered about the grades. I was when I was a kid. But I think once I got my black belt, it just seemed like volumes of money. But I was a black belt under the Cookie One, which is the Korean... the head of Taekwondo. I don't think many black belts are in the UK are actually under that, but yeah.
So no one's going to be coming to steal your fucking gym bag, then, are they?
They can, but
they can try.
I really like jiu-jitsu. I really like that element. I started jiu-jitsu in 2007. 2007, I think. So BJJ. And that was I like all the martial arts, and that goes back to what I said earlier about I want to be the superhuman. That's why I think I was really drawn. As soon as I saw the UFC, I was like, oh my god, that idea of not just being good at one thing, but being good in every scenario. Hence why I still try and swim, run, as well as be mobile, and I still practice all my lifts and the reactions and all those other things. In my time, I want to be sharp, but it does make you a little less visual, because the people who can do one or two things unbelievably well, and I'm like a bit of a jack of all trades, half pulling everything up a bit with a bit of a bendy back or something like that.
So how important is mobility? Obviously I know you said you're working on work on your mobility religiously. How important is it, do you think? How much could you stress it on? Is it like something you really apply with all your clients as well?
Yes, to a degree. There's only so much time I have. And with a lot of the people I train, the session might be cancelled the night before because suddenly they're off to somewhere else or work or something. Do you know what I mean? So sometimes your plans go out the window, and I'd like to spend more time on that. But I was watching last week. I've watched quite a few lower budget Cirque du Soleil shows and stuff like that. Whenever you see anyone who's truly strong, even the Olympic lifters, and I think this is something that bodybuilding is really lacking, is they're so mobile. And like an Olympic lifter will spend 45 minutes, an hour warming up, you know, and they can really deep squat with a straight back and their hips open, and a lot of them can, you know, do close to the splits and all that kind of thing. That hasn't sort of transferred into bodybuilding. But basically, whenever you see someone who's what I would call truly strong in themselves, they're usually mobile as well. They actually, and it's so easy, I think, to build strength off of mobility. So if you have this mobile base and then you put that as a foundation and you put on top, I think that makes it easier. Now, I'm sort of doing the reverse with myself, and it is proving a lot harder, but it's something that I'm going to endeavor with. And I get up and do my little bits and bobs, and I'll do them before I go to bed. And I'm going to continue to do that because, again, it ties in with longevity. You know, if I want to do something for a long time, if I want to, I'm 42, what am I going to like when I'm 52? What am I going to like 62? You know, the human skeleton arguably was designed to last 110 years. You know, Kelly Starrett says 120 years. So what we do with it counts, and I want it to have full ranges, and I want it to be healthy, and the joints ought to work. And I think it's like ironic that, you know, people always go, oh, you'll need a hip replacement or you'll need a knee replacement, when, you know, my nan had 2 knee replacements and she didn't do much with her knees. You know what I mean? Like it's, you know, keeping the joints well lubricated, you know. So I think mobility is really important. I don't suddenly think you should give everything up to do mobility, but I think if you want to be truly strong, look at sort of the gymnasts, look at these performers, and they're all pretty mobile. Their shoulders all work, you know, their hips all open, their spines all bend.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, you've got to think of the body as like a machine almost. Do you know what I mean? Like a computer or whatever. You've got to oil it, got to make sure all parts are functioning fine. You got to make sure everything's rotating and moving the way it should be. If you had like a fan in your computer and it weren't spinning properly, like that's going to cause things to overheat and break. Like, and it's the same if your shoulder mobility is poor. Like eventually that's going to have wear and tear damage and cause either you to have like poor lifting technique or poor core strength, whatever it is. So I mean, I've been trying to start working on my mobility training within the last couple of months because I've got quite poor hips for some reason. My hip flexors are really tight, and
most guys are, you know, like, and that's the one to stretch, you know, if you're a guy, you know, to really open up, you feel better for it.
Yeah, and it's like the knock-on effect. So I think, I can't remember it off by heart, but it's along the lines of like, because my hip flexors aren't working, I've got quite poor core strength, and that's also affecting my knees as well. So when I squat, like the reason why my knees are have been in pain is because they're taking quite a lot of the load because my hips aren't
exactly. They're being pulled on. Yeah. If the hip flexors are tight, you think it's not suddenly, as it's sort of lengthening, it doesn't want to lengthen, so it's going to pull the kneecap, and you might even have some femoral patella problems.
Yeah,
stuff like that.
It's mad. Like people neglect it. Do you know what I mean? They just like turn up into the gym. Yeah, just load 100 kilos on there. I'm gonna squat that, get big, and then they're like, "Oh, my knees are hurting." Like 2 years.
But this is where, you know, and I see it in a lot of the young boys in the gym. You know, like I'm talking about the 18, and they're loading, and already their shoulders are quite forwards. They look, you know, they walk around like this. I don't know if you can sort of see like that. And this should be open. You know, if you want to look intimidating, you want that open chest kind of thing. And as a result, they're loading at the front of their glenohumeral joint, you know, like, and really the stable place is back here. So they're creating more muscle in one area, but really their chest and their biceps are getting super tight. And yeah, you know, ultimately they won't be as effective. But this is where it comes into that education, and most people just do that because they want to look great. But I do think if you said to most people, if you just slightly alter your technique, if you spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes doing this, you could do this for 50 years and you'll look like this at 60, not just for your beach holiday in 7 weeks, you know, kind of thing, or get fit for Christmas. And that's where I would really like to, if I could have an influence, that's where I'd really like to make it a lifestyle, because, you know, a lot of people argue that we don't move how we used to, and perhaps we're never going to. So if we're smart, we're going to have to adapt and bring in an element of fitness, because I'm not chasing a stag with a spear. I'm not reaching up a tree to pick berries. And, you know, I'm not even a farmer, you know, or anything like that. So we've got to be a little smart about this. I'd love to see gyms like influence or have a little program, perhaps, you know, unfortunately it's cash and everything like that, but just, you know, teach people how the biomechanics of how to lift and all stuff like that. Just have someone they could reference and say, you know, almost like a cool, when you go into the Apple store, there's someone who can show you how this works and how that does. When you go into the gym, you don't have that person, and gym environments can be my first job was putting the weights. I was 13. I used to put the weights away at Spit and Sawdust Gym for £6 a night and a protein shake. And, you know, it was above the Co-op in Northumberland Heath called T-Seats. And, you know, I loved it, but there is a slightly strange environment that isn't there as much in the gyms, but it still is there. You know, you'll be talking to someone and they'll just suddenly look to their right and they're looking in the mirror as they're talking to you. You know, you know, I always find that thing a bit funny.
Yeah, I mean, I used to have, it's a mistake I made when I trained, is when I was young, I started training when I was 16. I was like chest mad, you know, always training my chest. Like, obviously I'd give it a rest day, but then back to training chest again, and I ended up like really round, hunched over shoulders, and I was like, my chest ain't looking any bigger. Like, what is going on? I'm just like rounding.
Because the shoulders are hiding it.
Yeah, so I had to I neglected training my back, so I had to spend loads of time training my back more than my chest to compensate. And then eventually my shoulders kind of started to pull back a little bit because my back muscles got stronger, and that gave me a bit more of an open chest. But I still have quite far rounded shoulders, and that's due to lack of mobility and so forth anyway. So
there's a great one. So you're sort of describing your chest and biceps maybe a bit tight. So a good one is I get a weighted pole, like a gym pole, but you can also get like a dowel stick and put a weight on it. Lie down, make sure you're completely flat. You're not got that arch in your back, sort of like dead bug style. And so I'm lying back, just let this open. So imagine I'm lying on my back on the bench and I'm letting those shoulders open just slowly, because you've got a little weight, so it's slightly being dragged. And over time, you can increase the weight. I'd start with like a 1 kilogram, but just you feel how tight your biceps are. When I get people to do it, they're like, oh my God, my biceps. I'm like, all that is your arm is straight. You just, you know, like you suddenly hear, you know, you can straighten your arm, and suddenly people can't believe how tight their biceps are. But that's the thing we do at the gym. We do bench press and we do curls, you know. And I understand why we do, but this is where it would be really cool if we had, I mentioned Kelly Starrett before, you know, like what he's done for CrossFit by bringing in mobility and understanding what the butt wink is to try and stop people, you know, slamming on their SI joints and having problems there and all that malarkey. It'd be good if the bodybuilding had that kind of thing. And I mean bodybuilding as in Mr. Olympia. I mean more like Bob and Dave at your local gym.
Yeah. So just going off on a little tangent, just wanted to sort of ask your opinion on what you watched UFC 230.
Of course I did.
Yeah. What did you think?
I've seen every UFC multiple times.
What did you think of the aftermath and the McGregor Khabib start? Let's start fight. Let's start from the beginning of that. How do you think Conor McGregor fared in that fight?
I was a little disappointed. You know, I'm a Conor fan, and I did want to see him win. Everyone knew what Khabib was about, and obviously, I'm talking now, and I've obviously read his appraisal that he put on Instagram the other day. And I also listened to Artem Lobov's interview, his first interview he's done with Ariel Helwani I think he did that Monday or Tuesday. And so, he's describing how the actual sort of like attitude started. But I was, Conor sort of saying he didn't really try that hard, train that hard and train that smart. And I've read his coach's book, John Kavanagh's Win or Learn, and I like all that. But you've got to win or learn, but you've also got to be smart and aware of the things you're going to face in the first time. You can't just go, well, we'll learn from it. You should have prepared for it in the first place, because you know what Khabib's about. I still feel, I'm perhaps an optimist here, but I still feel Conor has a few tools to really give Khabib troubles. I think giving up the first takedown was a big problem. Because even though, you can say nothing happened in the first round, he got him down with his first takedown. You could say it was a chain takedown, but he had his foot so deep in here, if you look at it, and it was never going. He didn't care. When they were both like sort of sat opposite, and it almost looked like Conor might get the sweep or the reversal right at the beginning. He didn't really care. He had this foot, and he just concentrated on this foot. And eventually they got to the cage, and he still had the foot at that point, and then could transition his chain wrestling. I think that was a problem. I think he needed to stuff or create more distance in the first two takedown attempts and his punches. But who am I to say? Like Conor's way above me, but I love watching it, man. I think it's brilliant. I loved the fight before Tony Ferguson and Anthony Pettis. I think it's crazy that Anthony Pettis caught him so hard, and the very thing that changed the fight for him and made it look like he was going to beat Tony Ferguson is the very thing that pulled him out of the fight after he broke his hand, and that's the thing. So how the fight evolved, I could go on about that for ages and stuff like that. I'm quite into that, and I'll almost talk to myself about it. Me and my friend Dave, we sometimes dissect the fights. But the aftermath, it wasn't good. I think it's a really strange situation, and lots of people are going, "Oh, Khabib shouldn't have offended his dad, shouldn't have offended religion, and all that kind of thing." But Khabib's now talking about fighting Floyd Mayweather. He knew, just as Conor knew what Khabib was all about. Khabib knew what Conor was all about in the beforehand, so he was always going to go for those things. And I find it a bit strange that everyone's like, "Oh yeah, he shouldn't have said those things. He's taking it too far." When suddenly, if he felt like that, he's going to make what, 5 to 6 million for this once they sort out the pay-per-views. Right. He's never going to have Khabib, suddenly Khabib's like this massive star whose Instagram jumped up 2 million and he's talking about fighting Floyd Mayweather and he'll get 50 million for that. He wouldn't have had those opportunities. He had not fought Conor. And so I think, I find, Conor knew what Khabib was about and Khabib knew what Conor was about. So it's not a big deal. I don't think he should have jumped out the cage at all. I think that was his chance. If he wanted to punish McGregor, don't choke him out. Keep punching him. Take him into the 5th round. Punch him, and submit him with 15 seconds to go and say, could have done that whenever I wanted. So, that's my take on the situation.
Yeah. It's strange because Khabib was Conor looked such a level below. But we know he's not, and I just think that 2-year layoff of not being in the octagon might have been a factor, because everyone forgets that when we're talking about it. And if someone had a 2-year layoff in boxing and then went in and fought the best guy, unless you're Sugar Ray Leonard or something, it's a little bit different, but went in and fought the best guy, they're probably going to lose. I mean, Tyson Fury, he's had a couple of warm-up fights and he's going to be fighting Deontay Wilder, and everyone's like, maybe it's a little bit too soon, he needs a bit more time to prepare. But when it comes to Conor McGregor jumping into the octagon with one of the best wrestlers the UFC's probably seen in a long time, if ever, no one cares about the 2-year layoff. We're just like, he should have just decked him in the first round with that left hand.
Yeah, and even when he got to the 3rd round, I liked his front kick a lot, the low front kick he was doing. But the punches didn't really have that. Well, he can often be off balance with that left hand anyway, but he wasn't really turning the corner. He wasn't really distance managing. He didn't really have a little bit of that karate style or, anything. He was just sort of standing there and, there wasn't that. So that was as a fan, the third round was actually quite disappointing because I wanted to see the striking that he really displayed against Eddie Alvarez.
Yeah, I mean, it's strange. I just didn't feel like it was Conor McGregor in there. I don't know whether you agree with me. It was weird. Like, I just feel when you watch him, he's like in his previous fights, he's like bouncing on his toes a little bit.
Yeah,
he's got that distance. He's got that range. He closes the distance, gets back out of the pockets, and so on. And I don't know whether it was because of Khabib's style that messed him up, but I just personally think it's because he hadn't fought in those 2 years, and it's completely different. And I just think he maybe lacked a little bit. Just got to close my window.
As I say, it's the war started.
They'll probably still be able to hear it. But yeah.
Are you in your bunker? Are you safe in your bunker?
Yeah, they're still going off. It don't matter. My window's closed as well. So, but yeah, that was it. That's all I've got to kind of go with you, go over with you today. We've been on for an hour, which has gone quite quick for me.
Yeah. So, well, I told you I can waffle and I could go and go and go and go. Well, that's handy because I've got an appointment in 20 minutes, so 8:15. So, but yeah, I love to chat, so it's not a problem.
Cool. I'll get you back on. Maybe we could talk more UFC. I do like a UFC little panel show every now and then for the big fights of like Phil Daru and stuff like that. So you're more than welcome to come on.
Oh my god, that'd be cool. That'd be cool. Yeah,
be interesting. But yeah, the floor is yours. 2 minutes. Advertise yourself. If anyone wants to get in contact for you for any podcast interviews and that, feel free to.
I'm on Instagram, Rob_Solly. Emails robsolly@icloud.com. Just if you want to chat, let's chat. But yeah, I don't have anything to sell. I just go and train people.
Cool, man. But I really thank you for coming on and chatting with me, man.
No worries. My pleasure.
I'll talk to you off camera for 2 minutes if that's okay with you, anyways.
Yeah.
And then that was it. But yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Have a good evening.